Okay, it's Friday, March 24th. This is an end of the day and end of the week SPY recap. First of all, on the daily chart today, we end up with a 2 down green bar. So we took out the low of the previous day on a 2 down, but we closed near the high of the day on a green bar. So that sets up a bit of an actionable signal to the upside starting on Monday. You kind of see this green bar. You expect it to at least test higher, and then we'll see if it kind of reaches our next targets and what that means in the bigger picture, which I'll get to in a second. But in terms of today, as I discussed on the closing video yesterday, the only real actionable signal coming in today was a buy above, a 2 down, 2 up kind of buy. Everything else was continuation lower. And ever since that Fed reversal day to the downside, you had a big red day, so you're expecting the lows to be taken out. That's what happened on this day. Then you end up with kind of a red day, 2 down, and you're kind of looking at that, expecting the lows to be taken out, but it's not really an actionable signal. It could, if price action wanted to follow through strongly, there were a lot of targets down here, and we'll get into that in a minute, but it did in effect take out the low of the day and then reversed. It got above the open of the day for most of the session and stayed higher. So in terms of just the daily signals, ever since you had this big reversal day on the Fed, that was kind of a 2 up failure. That was a good signal. But ever since then, this was a 3 bar, so there's no real actionable signal. You were just judging price action yesterday. Today, the only actionable signal was way up here, which you likely weren't going to get. So you were looking for maybe a reverse, continuation is one way to play it, but that's more of a momentum play. The only actionable signal actually could have been a 2 down failure that took out the midpoint of that bar. So I'll get to that in a second. We got close to doing that, but we didn't really follow through to get an outside bar. But those were the two actionable signals. So maybe I'll repeat that. You could have had a 2 up bar, or you could have had a 2 down failure that got to the halfway point of this bar, which we sort of did, but didn't follow through by the end of the day. So anyway, let's kind of go to the bigger picture, because that's what's most important now. If we go to the monthly chart, it's a very neutral month with 1 week to go. All that was required on this month, getting back to the concept, when you see this bar back in February, red shooter, you just expected the lows to be taken out. That's all that happened here. And then, you have these targets to reach all month long, but as it turns out, with a week to go, we might not be reaching those targets, and that's what you judge. And then by the end of this month, we'll see what's the most likely next, is it more likely to head up or down, or if it's neutral, we don't know. But at least for this month, certainly the expectation was to continue lower. We did that for a while, but the more and more we're not reaching our targets, the more you can get a failure. And then we have to see if we get a 2 up month next month. That'll be the actionable signal, should that, depending where this all ends up. We still have a week to go. On the weekly chart, we had the buy reversal signal earlier in the week that kind of started up for 2 days, but then the Fed announcement kind of shot that down. But as I discussed on the, looking at the daily chart, we didn't really have any actionable signals after Wednesday. It was just kind of continuation, and the continuation didn't follow all that much. So that's why we end up in this choppy environment that's kind of tough to say what exactly to expect next, but we know the key level. So in other words, we know the key level. We got a 2 up buy on Monday, and we'll see if we reach those targets. If we fail to reach those targets, we can be coming down, get some kind of a failure, and if this weekly chart ends up being a failure bar, we're going to have to take out the low of this week, and that'll be a 2 down week, and then maybe we'll expect the month to finally get to its targets. But we got to get that 2 down week, and the only way we're going to get a 2 down week is some kind of failure on this bar to start. That could either be right from the midpoint and lower to begin, or that, and again, that's more of a momentum play. We don't really have an actionable signal, but it's possible. The actionable signal will be some kind of 2 up that fails to reach this area and then gets a 2 down, or some immediate 2 up bar that goes to the halfway point of that bar and fails. Then we can start anticipating that maybe we're going to get a 2 down week, and maybe we'll head down there. Other than that, we're kind of still working on this compound outside bar to the upside here, which, we got the 2 down, 2 up reversal. We kind of just stayed neutral all week, but we can get, we can maybe look at 1, 2, and maybe a third week that gets up there, and we get a compound outside bar to that. So we're still working on that, but until we get a 2 down on the week. And also, as you're looking at this weekly bar, you do see some resistance up here at the midway point of, that kind of that tail. So if you go to the daily chart, that's right up in here as well. So again, what I'm saying is, if we get a 2 up day starting early, start the week, but there's a lot of resistance here and we fail, then we can begin to, really see if we can get the 2 down week. So we're going to look for signs that either we're continuing up to that high or we're failing and coming down here for a 2 down week and then maybe getting to the monthly targets. And in terms of today, just to what happened was you had the initial, pre-market range kind of near the lows of the previous day, and that's all that was expected to be taken out. It made a first move down there. If you looked at the 5-minute chart, it was just one bar that quickly, it was 3 bars, then 1 bar quickly took it out and then immediately bounced back up. So, if you were biased to the downside, I actually traded NVIDIA today to the downside. I didn't trade the indexes. When I saw that downward start and this stock just paused and continued lower, I bought some puts in here and that worked out all right. I wasn't really trading the indexes. But then if we go back to the index, what happened was we immediately came up, made a new intraday high. Then we didn't really hit any targets of anything, for liquidity purposes. We kind of then came down a little bit. At this point, you could have maybe considered that a failure bar, taking out the high. You had the daily, you were below the open of the day at this point. Maybe you could have went short, but you're kind of looking at it. You're going short here, just saying, I'm going to take out that low that already took out the pre-market low, and you got to get down there. You also see a kind of a tail down there that could be support. So you started down, paused, then you came down nicely. You probably had nice gains. Once you saw this reversal here, you had to just get out at break even because it didn't, that was the reversal play that should have followed through. So anyway, at that point, once it came up, I shot a video. I kind of saw the trend of the day was up, and I sensed that we were heading towards this liquidity area up here. And I shot a video buying SPY calls, and eventually we worked up to that area. And once it hit there, I said, I can't really tell if we're going to reverse here or continue up. As it turns out, we kind of held up there, and we end up with the green bar on the day. So we'll look for higher into next week. We'll see if we hit these targets. That's kind of the expectation until proven otherwise. If it fails, we could be getting a kind of a reversal to get that weekly chart into a 2 down mode. But until that weekly chart really gets 2 down, we don't really, we got to stay biased to the upside, even though it's kind of a tricky week in terms of the fact that it just ended with a bit of a shooter bar, but not entirely. So let's see what happens next week. A lot to digest, but you got to kind of start looking forward on all these different time frames and anticipate what might happen. And for now, the anticipation is kind of to move up, and we'll see if we get momentum. If we can't get to those targets, then we can start, really looking for those actionable signals of the downside, which really didn't unfold, after that reversal bar on Wednesday. Other than that, these were just continuations that really didn't continue that much. So that's why we'll start out to the upside, knowing there's still a potential failure here on the weekly chart, but we got to see it first.